Welcome back to the Daily Move. Today it's all about our golfers. It's looking pretty positive that most or some of the golf course may be opening even through this shutdown. So I think it's important for us to learn how to go through a proper warm-up series before swinging a golf club. Most of these exercises you can do as you approach the green, whereas some of these you probably want to do before you head out for your golf game. Enjoy. First up, we're going to work the ankles. So what we're doing here is we're doing ankle inversion and eversion. And as you can see here, I'm just turning so that my weight goes on the outside of my foot and then turning my foot in to put weight on the inside. The ankles are extremely important because if we're losing mobility anywhere in our bodies, then another joint pays the consequence for it. So if we're not able to properly get the rotation through our thoracic spine, or we're not able to pivot through the ankles, something else may pick it up like your knee or your hip, causing issues. So next what we have here is a golf ball, and we're doing a light rollout. Now the fascia on the bottom of our foot is sensitive, so I'm not putting my full weight into this. Just a nice stretch, a little bit of a rollout in the arch of my foot there. And then I also like to stick my heel down and then get the bridge underneath the toes. So next you're going to sit down, and we're working the tibia here, and it's the bone that goes from our knee down to our foot, and it creates this rotation. You can see me using my hands to create this. It's a good idea to use your hands to start this motion. Otherwise, we want to start it with our ankle. So once you've done a few rotations, you're going to turn it all the way in and then straighten your knee as straight as you can. It's okay if it does not go straight. As you can see, mine does not go straight. As soon as you hit the top range there, what you're doing is that rotation of the tibia. Again, not driving it with your ankle, but rather driving it with the tibia. And again, you can use your hands just to start learning that motion. And watch that you're not picking up range from the hip. So you can see I put my hands there on my thigh just to make sure it's just coming from that lower part of the leg. Afterwards, what you're going to do is you're going to have your foot flat on the ground, and we're going to create ankle circles here. So you can see I'm just reversing directions here, going clockwise, then counterclockwise, creating a full circle at that ankle joint. So next we're switching sides. Again, learning how to turn or rotate that tibia. I'm just going to turn here so that you can see it better. So right now I'm using my hands to guide that rotation. You should be able to control this without using your hands to do this, but it's always a good idea if it's a new motion to start teaching it with that guided assistance of the hand. So once you're comfortable with that, you're going to have it turned all the way out, straightening that knee, doing that rotation of the tibia, and then switching directions. Again, being mindful that you're not picking up any of this range from your thigh bone, and you're not just using the ankle. It's coming from that tibia. Again, you can always use your hands to help assist that motion. So next we have those ankle circles. So next up is a single leg balance. You're going to pick up the golf ball and then put it back down. Your choice to bend the knee or to keep it straight and just hip hinge. Both are going to work different things. You'll notice every time I pick up the ball, I actually change my hands to do that. It's going to add a challenge. It's good to constantly change this up. So bend the knee really deep to pick up the ball once, and then try to keep it a little bit straight and try to hip hinge the second time. After about 5 pickups, or you can do it for a time, you can switch legs. Start easy, but once it gets too easy, you do want this to be challenging for yourself. So start putting the ball in different positions to make your body turn in different ways. So next what we're doing here is just a loose knee. So you can see I do 4 kicks and then 4 rotations at the hip socket. So I'm working that knee joint hinge and then going into that hip rotation. Nice and loose there. Just bringing some blood flow into that knee. We have something called synovial fluids in every single one of our joints. And when we create motion at the joint, that's what creates that secretion, and it lubricates the joint for better movement. So next what I'm doing is I'm kneeling down and I'm putting the golf club between my hamstrings and my calf. And I'm using my hand to actually put pressure down into the calf because we want to relax them. So your choice, you can use the metal. I find that the grippy part at the end actually does a better job. So you can play around what feels like you're putting a little bit pressure into the calf so that it can relax. Play with using the end of the golf club or the center of it. And if you're at home, I usually use a wooden dowel. I find that it gives me better even pressure. And how you create more pressure is just by putting more pressure with your arms into the stick, mashing the tissue of the calf. So next up, I'm grabbing something here for my knee, and we're doing something called a King Arthur stretch. Gets the quad, a little bit of the hip flexor. So again, I'm using the golf club for balance here, but I'm tucking my pelvis under to feel a stretch into my hip flexor and quad. And then what I'm doing is I'm pushing forward, bringing that front knee over top of the toes, and then pushing back into that stretch again. We're going to go back and forth here 5 times. Now, as you come back, you want to think about the knee touching the floor, pushing into the ground and pushing forward in order for you to pull yourself back towards your heel that's on the wall. Once you've done 5, we're going to switch sides, doing the same stretch. So next we're gonna stand up. We're gonna get into the hamstrings here. So you can see that I'm leaning my hips back, keeping one leg straight, the other one bent, and then I'm lifting my toes up towards the ceiling to get a deeper hamstring stretch. You wanna keep your back nice and flat, so I'm not rounding down to touch my toes. Hold here for a few seconds before you stand up and go again. Performing anywhere from 5 to 8 repetitions before switching sides. So next we are gonna do some hip circles here. So you're kneeling, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna lift your leg up, and then you're gonna bring it out to the side, rotate the leg bone down before bringing the knee down to the floor. So it's kind of like a fire hydrant motion, then rotation, then bringing the knee to the front, repeating this. You wanna use the golf club there as balance so that you stay upright as you create these rotations. Again, working within the range that you have. You can do this standing as well if you find this too hard on the knee. I find by kneeling I have less ways of cheating, although you can cheat by side bending your torso, by leaning your weight onto the other hip. So now as we're switching sides here, so again, peeing on that fire hydrant, creating that rotation, and then bringing that leg out in front. So next we're going to perform some leg swings front to back, using the golf club for balance again. Doing between 8 to 10 reps on one side before switching. And now we're going to do a sideways leg swing, opening up the hip here, same thing, using that golf club for balance, performing 8 to 10 before switching sides. So this next thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna plant one foot down, and then the other one is going to rotate backwards. Now you can do this where you just plant it and open up the hip, or you can create this figure 4 and do that rotation. I prefer planting my foot down onto the ground. I feel like I get a better hip external rotation on the planted leg. We are working the leg that's staying still because we're forcing it into that external rotation. So once you've done between 6 to 8 repetitions, you're gonna switch sides. So same thing, your choice, figure 4, or you can step on out, whatever you prefer. Both of them are gonna create that external rotation inside that hip. So next what we're doing is we wanna move our pelvis. So right now we're actually hip hiking the pelvis. So I'm bringing my hip bone up towards my rib cage, keeping my arms still, holding that golf club in my hands. So after performing a few side bends, we are going to go more into a rotation, and you can see me push that knee forward to create that rotation in the lower lumbar. Now, our lower lumbar does not have a lot of rotation motion, maybe about 10 degrees of motion, but it's always good to warm that up before we start torquing it with our golf swing. So next we're going to move the top half. So we have the golf club around our shoulders there. And you want to limit it so you've got no hip movement, no knee movement, and no neck movement. So you can see my eyes stay in one place, keeping my head still. And I'm just trying to get my rib cage to create that rotation from one side to the other. Now this one here you can play with tempo. You can go slow to figure out the range. You can also hold it at your end range with an isometric, and it will actually help increase your mobility. Or you can go a little bit quicker, just creating basically some fluid, some blood flow into that area, just warming it up. The next thing that we're gonna go here is bring the golf club overhead as you go into a deep lunge, sink into a hip flexor stretch. Hold for about 3 to 5 seconds before you put the golf club back onto the shoulders, and then create a spinal twist towards the knee that's bent in front. So again, golf club goes overhead, feeling a good hip flexor stretch, bringing the golf club down towards the shoulders, and then rotating towards the bent knee. We're just switching sides here. So now the golf club is straight out in front of you, and you're rotating all the way down to the ankles. Nice straight arms with this. You can also play with bringing your arms a little bit closer towards your ears as you create that rotation. So you're going to take one leg, turn it out. The leg that's turned out, the same arm is going to reach down that leg, the other arm teeing up towards the ceiling. You're going to feel this in your lat or the side of your body that is facing the ceiling. And we're just going from side to side here. So again, one leg is facing straight, the other one turns out. The leg that's turning out is the leg that goes down to, or the arm that goes down towards the floor, reaching that opposite arm up towards the ceiling, feeling a nice stretch in that side body. Holding for a few seconds before switching sides. So next you're going to touch the ground here, feeling a stretch into the hamstrings. You're going to slowly walk your hands over to one leg, going into that spinal rotation again. If you have the range, you can actually take your one arm and bring it to the outside of your shin. And you can use that as leverage to get a little bit of a better twist in the spine. I would hang out in the center here, pulling your chest closer towards the ground just to take advantage of that hamstring stretch. And just keep going from side to side. We're gonna roll back up to standing here, and what we're doing is we're clamshelling the elbows. So we're bringing the elbows close together and then pushing them far apart. Opening up the shoulders here, getting a little bit of a chest stretch. So next we're gonna do a barrel hug, and then we're gonna go into extension and bring the arms straight back. So round that spine, give yourself a hug, and then you're gonna open up the chest, pinching your shoulder blades back together as you straighten the arms back. You really wanna round your back here because that's how you're gonna get that stretch. So next you're gonna interlace your fingers, you're gonna reach over top towards the ceiling, and now we're gonna create a side bend. So my feet are planted on the ground, and then I'm allowing my hip to start pushing out to the side, countering it with the arms, pressing up towards the ceiling, and then to the other side. When you reset, this time we're gonna create a rotation. As I rotate my spine to the right, I'm pushing my hip bone to the left. So it's kind of like you're wringing out a towel. So you wanna go in opposite directions, and we're going to just alternate the two. So now I'm going back to that side bend. And then it's resetting, and then going into that spinal rotation again, thinking about wringing out that towel. So hip bone goes in one direction, spine goes in the opposite direction. Now we just did 2 sets of this, but if you feel like you need some more, you pause the video and keep going. So next I've got my fingers curled, and you can see my thumbs facing down towards the floor, going up towards the ceiling, and then going backwards. We're creating rotation at that shoulder joint. Doing thumbs up, thumbs down. So it's important to stretch out the forearm. There is something called golfer's elbow, and usually if we're lacking mobility in one joint, another joint suffers, like we said before, and then all of a sudden we create pain in the elbow. So option number 1, you can stand grabbing your hand, pulling it down, feeling a stretch into the forearm. That's never deep enough for me, so I actually have to go down to the ground to feel that stretch. Now this one here, I'm taking the back of my hand and pressing it downwards, feeling a stretch into my forearm again. Same thing with the standing variation. I don't feel much of a stretch, so I have to go down to the ground to get that. So you can see you can get both at the same time there. Now I'm not putting any of my body weight into the wrist here. I'm just leaning back to create that stretch into the forearms. So next we're gonna work the fingers. And so what I'm doing here is I'm curling my fingers in and then extending one at a time. So you can see I go pinky, ring, middle, pointer, thumb, thumb, pointer, middle, ring, pinky. And now I'm making a fist and then extending my fingers back. I'm gonna do that twice and then go back to the fingers. So you can't see my opposite hand, but I'm actually doing this at the same time. Your choice if you wanna just work one hand at a time or if you wanna do them both together. Next, what I'm doing here is I'm bracing my forearm and creating circles at the wrist joint. So next we're gonna do some wrist strengthening exercises. I'm gonna grab 2 clubs. And you can see how I'm pivoting at the wrist in order to lift up the clubs and drop them down. So it's my wrist that's making all that motion happening. Great way to start strengthening the wrists. To make this exercise easier, just grip down the club. To make it harder, go closer to the edge. So we're gonna put 1 club aside. Here we're gonna create rotation at the wrist now. So you can see I'm starting here in the center. This is gonna make it much easier. If that's too easy, if you reach down to the end of it, it's going to have more of a counterweight here as you create the rotation. Now be mindful that the motion is coming from the elbow down and also into the wrist. So where you don't want this is in the shoulder or having to side bend your body. That just tells you that it's just too aggressive. So start in the middle of the club. So here I'm adding a little bit of resistance as I come back up, just in case the club wasn't hard enough. You can do a slight little isometric there just to make sure that that wrist is working. Well, that's my warm-up series for your golf game. I wish you the best of luck with the golf season. Let me know if those exercises helped out with your swing. And if there's anything else that I can help you with, I always take requests for the daily move videos. Have an excellent day. Happy moving, everyone. Bye.